Hi, I'm Joe Saunders with Miniature Landscape Hobbies, and in this video I'm going to give you an almost effortless way to prepare your bases for epic wargaming. And most importantly, I'm going to introduce you to a secret ingredient that'll make your basing process easy and accurate. Let's get to it. Miniature Landscape Hobbies is proudly supported by these sponsors. Recently, epic wargaming has become very popular. What is this? Well, it's gaming with pretty well any type of model that's smaller than, say, 28mm size. Most of them are 10mm, 15mm, or even smaller. In fact, I've heard of epic scale models right down to 2mm in scale. Obviously, painting these types of models have their own challenges, but they can also be very rewarding. One of the things I hear a lot, though, is that people are scared to base these. Why? Well, the bases, like the models, are small, and a lot of epic wargaming systems mount multiple models per base. This means that getting your grit and other basing details in around the models can be quite difficult. And of course, painting is going to be even harder because you don't want to get your brushes all over your nicely painted models when you're trying to lay down your earth tones or your underpainting on the grit itself. Fortunately, there's a secret hack to make this so much easier. The secret ingredient is probably the best thinner that's out there, and I'm talking about rubbing alcohol. Rubbing alcohol comes in lots of different sizes of bottles, and it's very cheap. It also comes in various levels of solution, ranging from almost 100% on down to fairly small percentages like 20 or 30. Pretty much any level of solution will thin your paints and glues to help you lay down your grit and your paints accurately on your base. With that being said, let's get down to the process so you can make some awesome epic scale bases for yourself. First, I need to start by saying that though we're covering epic, as in smaller scale wargaming in this video, the rubbing alcohol method of basing works perfectly with any size of base, and you should freely use this method with any scale, including on your terrain. We're specifically zooming in on epic scale here though, because the small size poses a particular challenge. Getting your glues and paints to settle on the bases and not on the models gets really hard at these tiny scales, so we need a strategy to fix this. Here is the classic pitfall of epic scale basing. After applying a glue to adhere your grit, the glue pooled on the surface of this model itself and the grit glued to the model as well as to the base. This of course looks bad, but rubbing alcohol pretty much prevents this from happening, making the whole process so much easier. To get started, let's look at the supplies you'll need. First, of course, are the models. I usually paint these separate from the base and glue them down afterwards. If you're curious, the models I'm using are from the 10mm Armoured Clash range by Warcradle Studios. This is an economical and fun epic type system set in a dystopian steampunk timeline. Of course, the actual models don't really matter to this type of basing, but if you're interested in the system, and you should be, as it's an awesome alternative to some of the other fantasy or sci-fi options out there, you can find a link to buy the range in the video description. Warcradle is an affiliate partner for me, so anything you buy supports the channel, which is greatly appreciated. For the basing, you need a container of grit, in this case sandbox sand, water, mine is in a squirt bottle, but this doesn't really matter, Mod Podge or white glue, earth tone paints to match your game surface, some ratty paintbrushes, don't use good ones for this, tweezers are useful but optional along with some grass tufts, you need some mixing cups and a pipette or eyedropper. Static grass and an applicator are useful but also optional. You definitely need black paint though, and lastly you have to have rubbing alcohol. This is a 50% solution, but as I indicated, the concentration doesn't really matter. To start, grab a mixing cup and mix equal parts black paint and glue or Mod Podge together. Add a spritz of water to this and a dash of rubbing alcohol. There's no proper ratio to use here. Just try to get the mix to the point where it flows to the lowest point while staying on the base. I do the step in batches of 10 or 12 bases, but you should mix enough for the number of models that you're doing. Now with one of your ratty brushes, apply the mixture to the surface of the base. The rubbing alcohol will give you some help by drawing the glue and paint off to the base surface, but try to be neat. Now dip the base in your grit and shake the excess off. If needed, also run a finger around the base of the rim to remove any unwanted sand. While the glue mixture is still wet on the base, go back to your cup and add a fair amount of rubbing alcohol to it. Again, there's no proper ratio here, but you want the mix to flow freely. Now you can pick this up with your pipette or eyedropper and deposit it on the base. Aim away from the model if you can. The rubbing alcohol removes the surface tension and the mixture flows to the lowest points, staying on the base and off the models. If you need to, you can tilt the base slightly to help it all settle. What's happening here is the glue and paint mix is penetrating the grit by capillary action to give a powerful bond. The rubbing alcohol is the carrier, and when it evaporates, only the bonded glue will remain. The addition of the black paint is a bonus, as you won't need to prime the grit separately. If this overflows on the rim, it's not really an issue at this point, and everything can be left to dry overnight. Once this is all dry, go ahead and overbrush the darkest earth tones onto your base. If you're worried about getting this on the model, dry brush the paint instead, working in several coats. That way the pigments won't slop around as much, and if you do get paint on your model, it'll just be a dusting that'll appear as though it's weathering. At this point, you should also paint the base rim too. Follow this with a similar overbrush technique or by dry brushing to apply a lighter earth tone. At this point, I usually also go back to do a second coat of the darker color to touch up the rim. And with this, the base is effectively done. The next steps add foliage, so could be optional depending on your subject. If you're going to add foliage though, go ahead and put small batches of glue or Mod Podge on top of each base, then apply static grass, either by sprinkling it or with an applicator. While this is drying, and if you have them, grab your grass tufts and other scenic effects. Since we're doing epic scale, you may need to tear or cut the tufts into smaller pieces, since most are made for 28mm models. Now get out your tweezers, dip the tufts in glue, and apply them as you see fit. Once this is dry, you're finished your basing, though I do suggest you later spray a coat of matte varnish on your models to protect your work. Now you should have an awesome batch of epic bases that look great and are ready for the game table. And thanks to the process of using the rubbing alcohol, your paints and grit should all be nicely settled onto your base and not adhered in horrible looking patches on your precious models. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon for awesome deals and perks, and support my channel while doing it. See you next time for more miniature gaming, painting, and diorama videos. But most importantly, until then, remember to keep building life in miniature.